Mario Party, a classic party game for all ages. This family-friendly adventure has been entertaining audiences since the Nintendo 64. But as anyone who's played a match well knows, it has a dark side. Mario Party is capable of destroying the best of friendships, parties and office get-togethers. But the question is, why? Well, let's explore Mario Party's manipulative side to see how nobody wins when Mario and the gang get together. Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of The Science Of, the show where I take a look at the science behind your favourite game shows and more. Today we're delving into Mario Party, exploring the series' many boards and mini-games in an attempt to figure out how this joyous, colourful experience turns even the calmest of players into blood-hungry star hogs. Seeing as we're at the 25th instalment of the series so far, I shouldn't really need to explain how a Mario Party works. But just in case. The name of the game is Collecting Stars. Mario and friends make their way around a game board, collecting coins by landing on board spaces and winning mini-games, which you can then use to buy items to either help yourself get around the board faster than your opponents, or to get a star. By the end of the game, the player with the most stars win. Okay, so that all sounds fairly straightforward, and yet, there is still this ongoing meme about how Mario Party is supposedly this big friendship ender. And that's a little bit weird, right? I mean, you don't hear the same thing about other party games. Okay, yes, granted, a game of Monopoly might finish with a hotel being shoved where the sun doesn't shine, but say a game like Just Dance, you don't finish a song by slapping your friend dramatically in the face just for doing better than you at that song. Or back on the PS1, we would never have dreamed of finishing a game of Crash Bash by throwing our controller at the screen. Instead, we're actually more likely to throw Crash Bash in the bin. In order to understand what Mario Party does to us, we first need to look at what it means to be competitive and the variations of competition we see in nature. Then we can dive deeper and look at the human mind, seeing what goes on in the brain to maybe figure out what stimuli from the game causes the brain to trigger a competitive response, which would typically result in someone throwing a Joy-Con at the TV when losing a game of Bowser's Big Blast for the 15th time in a row. But before we look at how Mario Party makes people so competitive, we need to ask a simple question. What is competition? There are a few answers to this dependent on your background. Now me, I'm a biologist, and in biology, competition is described as a rivalry for resources. In the animal kingdom, we see many different types of natural competition. In fact, it's one of the fundamental features of living organisms. From the largest elephant to the smallest microorganisms, all life will experience one of two types of competition: interspecific and intraspecific competition. Interspecific competition is the competition between members of different species, such as cows and sheep having to share a field. Both these species eat the same food, grass, and will have to compete for that. Intraspecific competition exists as the competition between members of the same species. In the case of Mario Party, we'll be exploring a type of intraspecific competition. It's members of the same species competing to see who's going to be the superstar. Now, it's all well and good to understand what sort of competition we're exploring, but it doesn't mean a ton unless we can explain why people get competitive and why some people become such bad losers. To understand how the brain reacts to competitive situations, we first need to understand how the brain reacts to, well, anything. The brain is incredibly complex. Senses generate a signal when they come into contact with a stimuli, whether it be by touch, smell, sight, etc. The brain processes the information from these senses and then sends it back to the body so the body can react. Dependent on the stimuli and how the body needs to react, different parts of the brain will be activated. This activation takes place in the upper brain called the cerebrum. If we take a look at the brain from above, we see that the cerebrum has a left and right half. We call these hemispheres. These hemispheres consist of 6 lobes that have a ton of different functions. The left hemisphere of the brain is largely responsible for speech and abstract ideas, whereas the right hemisphere of the brain is usually responsible for spatial thinking and imagery. When we look at the outer layer of the cerebrum, the cerebral cortex, we find that the right cerebral cortex supplies spatial information to the body, such as where your hand is, and the left cerebral cortex is responsible for speech and language. Mario Party, a game focused around mini-games involving a lot of spatial awareness, is much more likely to be using the right hemisphere of the brain than the left. But, did you know? The addictive competitiveness of Mario Party has actually backfired on Nintendo before. And in fact, it really didn't take them long. Back in 1998, with the release of the first Mario Party on the Nintendo 64, parents were noticing outbreaks of blisters on the palms of their kids' hands. It was found that these blisters were the result of 5 mini-games: Paddle Battle, Tug of War, Pedal Power, castaways, and deep-sea divers, where players were expected to rapidly rotate the joysticks to win. This resulted in Nintendo being taken to court, where as part of a settlement, they had to end up giving out 4 pairs of Pro Gamer gloves for each copy of Mario Party sold, to stop players from experiencing blisters, in addition to paying $75,000 of legal fees. In fact, this was such a big deal that in the latest Mario Party game, Mario Party Superstars, these minigames were brought back, but with a special notice telling players to not use their palms. Now of course, just because Nintendo puts a warning on a game, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to follow their instructions. I mean, personally, I just really wanted the star. I think it's worth the hand damage. Anyway, on to the next bit. Ow. So now we know the structure of the brain and how it works. Well, generally. Let's get some specifics to try and figure out how games like Mario Party induce these competitive responses. A study from 2004 compared the impact of competitive versus cooperative games to see which areas of the mind were stimulated. This study involved members of the public playing a game similar to the kind of minigame you'd find in Mario Party. The game acted similar to Connect 4. Players were given a vertical grid of 25 squares, and were asked to build a set pattern using coloured tokens, yellow for the player, and blue tokens representing both supporting or blocking tokens, dependent on whether the player was playing a competitive or cooperative game. Whilst playing the game, players underwent functional MRI scans, which illustrated that both competitive and cooperative play resulted in a pretty common set of neural responses. The right superior parietal cortex and the superior frontal gyrus were pretty important in both mental sets. Now, this isn't too surprising. The superior frontal gyrus is thought to be associated with the processing and holding of new and already stored information. This is going to be required for reasoning and comprehension, which is definitely going to be important whenever playing any kind of game. And then there's the right superior parietal cortex. This region of the brain comprises of several sub-regions, meaning that it plays an important role in all sorts of brain functions that could be useful for playing games, including cognitive and working memory. Both of those regions are definitely going to be active during your average game of Mario Party. You're going through a wide range of different mini-games, so you need to take in a lot of information, which you then need to process in a relatively short time. In fact, outside of Mario Party, there's only one franchise I can think of where these regions would be more stimulated, and that would be the WarioWare games. Where things get much more interesting is the comparison between competition and cooperation, which illustrated that when players underwent competition, it was associated with the activation of the inferior parietal and medial prefrontal cortexes. The right inferior parietal cortex is considered important in the distinction between actions produced by yourself and actions generated by others. This would be highlighted during times of competition, as it doesn't require the player to merge themselves with others. This would also lead to regions of the brain being activated when an opponent imitates your actions, as the brain tries to define what is being done and by who. In a competitive scenario like Mario Party, this would help the player to identify possible risks on their way to get the superstar. The medial prefrontal cortex plays a regulatory role in a wide range of cognitive functions, including inhibition control, habit formation, and working spatial and long-term memory. There's also hard evidence that this region is involved in mentalizing. This area contains spindle cells, a classification of large projection neurons which are only found in great apes and humans, and these are believed to be involved in the coordination of widely distributed neural activity involving emotions and cognition. This is important for a competitive framework, as adopting this competitive state of mind needs maintenance of both your own and others' perspectives of the game. So now we know what happens in our brains when we get competitive. But this still doesn't explain how a game like Mario Party can destroy friendships. As mentioned earlier, the brain itself is made up of many millions of cells, with most important of these cells being neurons. These cells will accept, process and perform actions in response to different stimuli, never acting in isolation but instead communicating with each other thanks to the release of chemicals called neurotransmitters. There are more than 40 of these neurotransmitters, which include some classics like dopamine, which is often considered the body's reward centre, and serotonin, which is associated with feelings of happiness and calm. In addition, there are other important neurotransmitters with fun names like glutamate, gamma-aminobutyric acid, norepinephrine, acetylcholine, and histamine. These neurotransmitters are stored in the neuron synapses and are released in response to different stimuli. When you play a game like Mario Party, these neurons will release different neurotransmitters in response to the game. Throughout a game like Mario Party, which is generally bright and cheerful, the body will release the chemical serotonin. So going into a game of Mario Party, you'll already be feeling pretty good. Your body will be experiencing good feels from the serotonin. But then the roles and minigames start, and this is where you could start going downhill. You see, in Mario Party, the roles are random, and a lot of the games are designed so that you won't be sure of who's won until the end, meaning that the body would be anticipating a big rush of dopamine as a reward for a job well done. But then, if you lose, the body doesn't get that rush of dopamine. Instead, a hormone called cortisol is released, denying the body its craved dopamine and in some cases leading to Joy-Con throwing actions expected when playing with friends. And there are some ways that Mario Party games are designed which could make this dopamine delivery refusal even worse. For example, the minigames are generally designed to be really simple, requiring minimal button presses and as such resulting in some very close calls. In these situations, the anticipation of dopamine would be far greater than if there was no chance of winning whatsoever. This gets even worse at the end of the game when bonus stars come into play. Bonus stars have been a part of Mario Party since its first installments, and rewards players with stars for winning a few random categories ranging from being the richest player to moving the most spaces during a game. This can have a huge impact on the results of the party. And let me tell you something, you haven't experienced real pain until you've had a 2-star lead snatched away from you at the very last minute. In this case, the build-up of anticipation for the dopamine will have been building for much longer than with a minigame. So to have it just pulled away will result in a much greater reaction. And stay out.
Oh no!
Put this all together and it's not surprising that people can react so badly to losing a game of Mario Party. The constant anticipation and rejection of dopamine would make for a pretty rough ride. In fact, it isn't too dissimilar to the chemicals released when gambling. When you win a bet, your brain releases endorphins, it feels good, and in some cases people will keep betting until they win again, and get that same release of dopamine. So there we go. If you'd like to see me cover more of the science behind the Mario Party series, then comment down below, telling me what your favourite Mario Party minigame is, or just game in general. Best comments will appear at the end of the next video. Or if you'd like to see me cover more from the Mario series, then check out this video here, where I take a look at how Princess Peach can float like a candy wrapper caught in an updraft. Or if you prefer party games, I have the perfect video for you. Check out the video here, where I take a look at the science behind Mario Kart's anti-gravity, and how it actually might be more science fact than science fiction. Either way, if you enjoyed this video, then please remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, so I can keep exploring the science behind your favourite video games and more. I'll see you next time.